Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Megan.
We're shaking our gree-gree. Megan's grabbing it. Oh, whoops. Megan's dropping it.
The throne.
Oh, no. The bone throne.
It's okay.
All right.
Oh, my God. Look.
Oh, Megan.
She got cobwebs on her.
She did. Whoops. I guess I better dust the office once in a while, eh? Oh, Lord. Okay. I'm bringing us, I don't want to call it old-timey, but older, okay? And as I say this, I just realized it's like almost the same year my parents were born. So sorry, Mom. It's not old-timey. It's just more advanced than we are in
vintage.
age.
You're bringing us a vintage case.
Yeah. In 1956,
Dude, that's literally the year that my mom was born.
Mine too. No, mine was born in 57. So, In 1956, two teenagers were found brutally murdered in what the press called the Montana Sweetheart Murders. It would take more than 65 years for the long unsolved case to be cracked through the use of forensic genealogy. Oh, dun, dun, dun.
This is a freaking, what do you call the boxes that you buy?
Yes, like the 23andMe
Thank you.
DNA.
This is a 23andMe case.
It is. It's actually the oldest so far solved case through DNA analysis.
Okay.
65 years old. The Lovers Lane slayings happened on January 2nd, 1956. Two teenage sweethearts went to Pete's Drive-In restaurant in Great Falls, Montana. The couple were 18-year-old Lloyd Bogle and 16-year-old Patricia Kalitzke. They arrived just after 9 p.m., and it was the last time that they were seen alive. When the young lovers failed to come home that night, their families naturally believed that the smitten couple had eloped because it's 1956.
Yep.
The next day, however, 3 boys that were hiking along the Sun River in Great Falls came across a grisly sight. In an area known as a rendezvous spot for teenagers, the boys came across the body of a young man. When the police arrived, they found the body face down with a bullet hole in the back of his head. It was Lloyd Bogle. His hands had been tied behind his back with his own belt before he was shot dead.
He was shot execution style in the back of the head, wasn't he? Or even in the forehead.
In the back of the head.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was laying face down with his arms tied behind his head. Or not behind his head, behind his back.
Behind his back.
The radio, headlights, and ignition switch on his car were on, and it was still in gear. Detectives decided that a robbery had not been the motive because Lloyd Bogle's expensive, his name was actually Lloyd Dwayne.
But they called him Dwayne.
Yeah, he went by his middle name.
A lot of people did. He was probably born in the 30s or 40s since this is the 60s.
Yeah, because he was
40s.
He was probably 18. He was 18 at this time. Yeah, so they decided that it was not a robbery as the motive because his expensive camera was still in the car, but there was also still not a sign of Patricia Kalitzke. It was initially believed that she'd been kidnapped by whomever had murdered her boyfriend, Dwayne. But then after a search, Miss Kalitzke, by the way, was a junior at Great Falls High School, while Mr. Bogle was an airman from Waco, Texas, stationed nearby.
So she was probably 16 and he was 18.
Yeah,
and
I said that earlier. She was 16.
Yeah.
Yep, she was still
finishing school, and he's in the military.
He is, and he's stationed nearby at an Air Force base. Yep. They had actually met in December 1955, This is January 1956.
So they're just a month.
They were just 2 months together.
Just courting.
Yes.
Had gone to the makeout spot to get a little necking in.
Yep. According to one of the investigators on the case, they both loved dancing and music, and Dwayne Bogle was instantly smitten with Patricia, also known as Patty, to her close friends and family. The next day, 2 days after they went missing, is when a county road worker found the body, identified as Patty Kalitzke. She also had been shot in the head and had injuries that were consistent with a struggle and a sexual assault. A search of the immediate area uncovered very little evidence, while a forensic swab was taken from Patricia's body. Luckily, it was placed on a microscope slide and preserved. It would, many years later, prove to be the most important piece of evidence. However, back in 1956, we've only got police detective work to go off from because we have no way to test anything from her body on those slides at this time. The local press covered the story, describing the teenagers as lovers and dubbing the crime the Lovers' Lane slayings. Newspaper headlines went on to announce that a wide search was being undertaken in an effort to find the killer. Many different agencies offered their help to catch the killer. Sheriff DJ Lapierre of the Cascade County Sheriff's Department made an appeal to members of the public to offer up names of any potential suspects and announced that he would use his own money to buy a polygraph machine with the intention of employing 10 officers full-time to work the case until it was solved.
Oh, new technology. And yeah.
They just wanted...
Not even admissible in court,
No.
but they just wanted to solve this
They
thing.
did. Yeah, because we have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old that were murdered just sharing their love. A reward was put up for any information that led to the arrest of the killer, and over the course of the investigation, as many as 35 suspects were considered. One of those was notorious South Boston mobster James Whitney Bulger, Bulger, who was later convicted of participating in 11 murders, and it was a hot topic at the time.
Sure.
Okay. So Bulger had actually lived in Great Falls in the 1950s and had been arrested in Great Falls in 1951.
Just feel like a mob-related hit or killing probably isn't going to be with two kids necking out in the woods unless there was some type of a connection or a debt.
His MO was sexually motivated crimes. It's just that
he was affiliated with the mob.
Yes,
but
yes.
He was involved in sexually motivated offenses.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. He was not working for the mob when he was arrested in Great Falls in 1951 for rape. Yep. His involvement in the case meant that for years, Mr. Dwayne Bogle's family contended with crazy stories about what might have happened to him, including rumors that maybe Dwayne himself might have been involved with the mob.
Really?
Okay. But another high-profile serial killer by the name Edward Wayne Edwards. See, you're born to be a serial killer when you are given the same name and 3 first names.
3 first names,
Edward,
not 2.
Nope.
3.
And 2 of them are the same. Technically it is 2, okay? Because his name is Edward Wayne Edwards.
Could have been Edwards.
Edward Eddie Edwards.
Jesus.
It's so bad. But he perpetuated 2 double murders. He murdered William Billy Lavico and his girlfriend Judith Straub in Ohio in 1977.
So he's been involved in a lover's murder before.
Actually 2, because there's that one, and then there's the sweetheart murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew in Wisconsin in 1980. Edwards was also found guilty of the murder of his foster son, a crime which saw him sentenced to death at that point in time. So he killed 2 lovers style murders. He committed 2 of those, which that's 4 people, and then his foster son, and that's what got him the death sentence. Despite the many suspects investigated, there was never any forensic evidence linking them to the Bogle-Kalitzke murders. Detectives pursued every lead, but each landed at a dead end. Eventually, after 10 years had passed, reward money had been distributed and investigation scaled back. By 2001, the Bogle-Kalitzke case, known as the Montana Sweetheart Murders, was reopened by Detective Phil Madison, and the investigation reportedly made progress. The DNA swab that had been taken by Patty Kalitzke and was preserved since 1956 was sent to the Montana State Crime Lab. And against all odds, technicians found a sperm cell that did not match that of Dwayne Bogle.
Okay.
Of the 35 suspects tested against the DNA sample, because remember they had 35 prime suspects to begin with, they all came up without a match. Madison considered the case a mystery and believed that it would never be solved. After numerous other lines of inquiry came to nothing, the case was again closed. Then, some 11 years later, in 2012, Detective Sergeant John Cadner was actually working on his first cold case, and he decided to re-examine some case files. Sergeant Cadner of the Cascade County Sheriff's Office was put in charge of the investigation into the long unsolved double homicide. And at this point in time, it's over 50 years old, right? So he had actually grown up in small town Iowa himself and had never heard of the murders of Dwayne Bogle and Patricia Kalitzke. And so this kind of piqued his interest. There's a quote from him. There was just years and years of documentation and numerous suspects that had been looked into, but I knew the key was going to be DNA. So in 2019, further DNA testing carried out on the sample with the help of Bode Technology, a Virginia company that specializes in DNA analysis. A second DNA profile was extracted from the sample, which had been uploaded to a genealogical database, and a match was made.
Okay.
This meant that a family connection had been established, meaning the killer's ancestors had uploaded their DNA to the genealogy database. After the 2018 arrest of Joseph James D'Angelo, known as the Golden State Killer, many different law enforcement agencies began turning to genetic genealogy. That's when we really started looking at the evidence we had and if we could potentially do the same thing, Sergeant Cadner said. On June 8th, 2021, the Cascade County Sheriff's Office announced that it had unmasked the killer. The office identified a Kenneth Gould, a horse trainer who had died in 2007 as the likely suspect, who had shot and killed Dwayne Bogle and Patty Kalitzke more than 65 years ago.
What?
Well, 65 years ago in 2021.
He's dead, so we can't find out anything.
Yep. It was, according to Sergeant Cadner, the oldest homicide case in the United States to be solved with genetic genealogy. Kenneth Gould would have been 29 years old in 1956 and had lived just a mile from Patty Kalitzke's house. He kept horses and was known to ride them throughout the Montana landscape. While his home was about 600 yards from the house where Patty had grown up, Gould had married a different 16-year-old girl in 1952, and they eventually had 5 children. After the Montana Sweetheart murders, however, Kenneth Gould left the area. He reportedly was seen living in 2 other Montana towns before moving to Alton, Missouri in 1967. Sergeant Cadner said Gould never returned to Montana, even to visit his family.
So he has children.
5.
That he just basically abandoned.
I don't know
left his wife.
if he took his wife and children with him.
Okay.
But he didn't come back to visit any of his other family. I couldn't find where he had abandoned his children, but I think that he moved his family and never came back to Montana.
So
in other words,
he have a thing with Patty?
Very possible, because he did. Patty was 16, remember, and he did marry a 16-year-old.
I think that was
girl.
typical for
it
that
was
time.
Absolutely.
So is he following her around? Does he have a thing for her? Are they having an affair? I mean, who knows?
I'm not sure.
Or did he just come across these two and decide to be a complete fucking psychopath and shoot them?
Why I feel like he followed them. Like I'm more
horror
likely
movie style.
to buy into the fact that he was a smitten kitten with Patty and he was jealous. He had no known criminal history, by the way.
I wonder if he was seen around the diner or anything that night before they went out to go and make out.
Right. I don't know. Unfortunately for detectives, Kenneth Gould had previously passed away in 2007 at the age of 79 in Oregon County, Missouri, and was cremated. With no body to take a sample for DNA comparison, Cadner approached Gould's closest living relatives, his children.
Ugh.
And he says...
That's not how you want to...
No! He says, I wasn't sure how they were going to react when I went to them and say, hey, your dad's a suspect in this case, but do you want to work with us? But he said, actually, they were really great to work with. 3 of Gould's children submitted DNA samples, and all were shocked to learn that their deceased father was being investigated in connection with the double homicide of Bogle and Kalitzke in 1956. The testing confirmed that Sergeant Cadner had long suspected that Kenneth Gould was the killer. His daughter said, you never know. Some people just have secrets and they never told anybody. Obviously, I can't put the gun in his hand, but when you put everything together, there's no doubt in my mind that he's the suspect who did it. With passage of time, the only thing Cadner felt was left, apart from justice, was giving closure to the families. So now he says it conclusively allows us to stop wondering. And Patricia's sister, Darlene, actually spoke fondly of her sister, saying she's always had a big smile and those big blue eyes, and it has given them some closure to at least know a name and know that that person is no longer here. And but
I agree.
In like the sergeant said, like that at least is something. Like we can give the family that, even though we can't give them justice. But there is a piece of me, Megan, as I was researching this case, and there's not a ton of information. I know this is shorter than typical cases that we cover in terms of details because it just happened so long ago. But there's a part of me that, like, my heart breaks a little bit that he got to live 79 years.
Absolutely.
With this secret.
He got away with it.
He did, with no other criminal history and no other ties to any other case. It makes me think he absolutely had an infatuation with Patty and was jealous.
Agreed. Or there was some type of an illicit relationship, which nobody likes to think, ill of a victim, of course.
I know.
But the fact that has he never been caught?
I was going to pose that other crimes as well.
But his DNA did not come up in any other crime scenes that we're aware of or that's been disclosed.
That's been put into the
it's highly likely. And one of those situations that make you think about how potentially people are rehabilitatable or a completely low risk outside of one given situation.
Of the situation of jealousy, possible jealousy here, right?
He should have been punished. He should have been in prison for life or, 40 years, whatever their thing was there. Clearly life is where I would go with something like that. But at the same time, this is a man that never committed another crime.
Correct. That is known of. And at first, when I was reading into this and in considering other alternative hypotheses, I was thinking, okay, so they found, Dwayne's sperm, they found this other person's sperm. What if that was consensual? But from everything that I read, it did say that there was evidence of sexual assault.
Oh, you're right. I am so sorry. Right.
Yeah. So that made me believe that there were injuries that were could determine
this was a
sexual
sick
assault.
kind of obsession, and he clearly shot the male and then raped her and murdered her.
Yes.
Okay, and that makes more sense.
But can still be done out of jealousy and anger.
It's scary.
It is. But and like you said, I had thought the same thing. Like, what if he just hasn't been caught in other areas? But the DNA is out there and it hasn't triggered anything. It'll be interesting to see if in the future, as more people are doing these DNA tests and more cases, right, are being tested, because it takes them a while. So it'll be interesting to see if he pops up in any other cold cases that have DNA evidence that just haven't been put into the system yet.
I feel like another angle on this that's really interesting is that with these Lover's Lane type murders, this was a really interesting time for the beginning of pop culture and urban legends.
Yeah.
And the whole getting murdered at the makeout session, think about the beginning of many horror movies, right? Or when I was growing up, it was an urban legend that was very similar where a girl and a guy are making out and he hears something outside the car and he gets out of the car and it says, lock the doors and I'll be right back. But he never comes back. And so the girl gets in the car and she leaves. Okay. I'm sorry. Wait, before that, you missed the best part, right? The scary part. She hears scraping on the roof of the car, right? Back and forth and back and forth. And she finally leaves because he hasn't come back. And when she drives to the police station, they come back to her after having gone out to the site to inform her that he was hanging in the tree above her car. And it was his feet scraping on the roof.
Back and forth.
Right?
Yes.
It's an old urban legend. I think we've all heard it.
Yep.
It might have actually even been in... You don't watch horror movies, but there was a horror movie that came out called Urban Legend, kind of after like Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer and kind of that era.
Yep.
And maybe I stole that directly from there, but it was one that I always heard too. It makes you wonder, though, how much of it was this type of a case from back in the very early 50s that caused that legend. And most of those urban legends started with the premise that we don't want you doing dirty, naughty stuff, you bad teenagers. Sex is bad. Drugs are bad. There are ways to scare you. And this is a scary story to get you to not go back to the makeout place.
I agree. And have the teenage sex before marriage.
Yeah, but just interesting because I feel like this easily could have been an urban legend, and now we have it potentially solved as well.
Yeah, 65 years. That's insane. And I know we say this a lot, but we're going to continue to see this. And I like covering stories like this because, I mean, now it's been even more than 65 years. We're at like 66 or something like that, 67. 67. But their stories deserve to be told too. But 67 years of not knowing who did what to your loved one is
in a
65 years
small town America, where you feel like everything's safe and their family members have lived all of this time with no answers. Token,
small town America, like I could be sitting in the local diner with my family's killer and not know it
many times, probably. Or even scarier, he left, right? And ends up in Missouri. Think of all of the people who he's encountered and made friends with and had a career who are, when they find out, right? Like the kids do, that he's a murderer, are like, no, not him.
Right. Like, and oh my gosh, I left, my kids have spent the night with his kids.
Yeah. And he was a great guy and completely safe and wouldn't hurt a fly.
That's the most terrifying to me. I actually prefer the ones that are openly scary and crazy. Like that you know what you're going to get.
Yeah, that you get off the streets. Or when you do let them out from jail, they immediately start committing crimes and things again because you know them that there's a societal issue. They aren't able to acclimate to societal norms and must stay incarcerated for their safety and ours.
For sure.
This is not like that.
It is not. It's not. I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear from you guys. I think it was a crime of passion. I really do. I don't know that he did this the rest of his life. He also didn't move. He only moved from Montana as well. You know what I mean?
So but he did leave pretty quick after.
He did. He absolutely did, and then never returned, not even to visit his family. So he didn't do that to at the other places. Like he didn't just up and leave and then never return. So that's what makes me wonder if he didn't recommit as well.
And she clearly never made any statements to any of her girlfriends, of which I'm assuming she has. Like, you know, she's going out with her new beau, who's, 18 and from the Air Force Base nearby, that, hey, creeper horse guy from down the road has been stalking me or anything like that. Yeah. Or did she babysit for his children? Right. Like, I don't know. I have so many possibilities, none of which can be confirmed.
Here's the thing. She's 16. He's 29. So in her mind, he's a full-ass adult because he is a full-ass adult.
Oh, yeah.
It's very possible she babysat. My gosh, like they were neighbors. So they knew each other. That had to have been so confusing for her, too. I don't know. It's awful. It's so awful. But at least now it's solved. So are we ready? I know this was a little quickie, but are we ready for a brain bath? Every once in a while, we got to throw some quickies in there. So I'll get us a brain bath. Give us a brain bath. But I do have to shout out to one of our listeners. I want to tell the story, Megan, of what happened the last time we were recording.
Yes.
And We had a listener send in a brain bath. And the email happened to come through while we were recording. And I'm like, oh, great. We have this personal brain bath. And she's like, you can use my name. And here's this very specific story about how I, obtained something. Okay.
And we did it.
We did.
We were recording
it. It was hilarious. It was a great story. And right before we were about to end the recording, another email came through that said, on second thought, don't use my name because my husband might start listening to the podcast and he can't know that this is how I acquired this certain thing. So we're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I read that email. She's like, just change my name, So glad that I opened and read that email before posting that.
But we couldn't just change your name.
We could not. It's such a specific story that if your husband is to listen, he will absolutely know, even if we change your name or even change slightly the nuances of how this particular thing was acquired, he's going to figure it out.
Oh, for sure.
So I just want to say to her, thank you for sending in that brain bath. We got a fantastic chuckle out of it.
It was great.
And the picture that you attached as well. But there's just no way until your husband will find it funny too. Can we share that? But thank you for that.
You let us know when he has discovered your hilarious and harmless indiscretion.
Very harmless, yes. So just wanting you guys to know that sometimes we are working in real time for things, and I'm so grateful that she sent that follow-up email because we were so close to being done and publishing.
We hadn't published, so she was lucky there.
Yes. So I'll give us a different brain bath. I found kind of a funny thread on Reddit.
I'm on there too.
Were you just on Reddit too?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
Okay. The question is, what's the funniest thing you or someone you know has got arrested for?
What?
Yeah. So here's some of the responses. This one says, Perceptions89 says, I had a friend a while ago who went to a Halloween party dressed as Lieutenant Dangle from Reno 911.
The shorts.
Mm-hmm. He and another guy wound up getting DUIs and spending the night in jail. Although DUIs are not funny in the slightest, but watching this dude do the walk of shame out of the precinct dressed as Lieutenant Dangle was one of the funniest things that I have ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I would agree. Now, this one, when I was a kid, my mom's friend was arrested once because she threw a piece of fried chicken at her husband.
I have something similar.
First of all, I would never waste fried chicken on anger. I'll throw a fork before I'm throwing my fried chicken.
Charnell, go ahead and finish.
Okay.
Are you finished with that one?
No, there's more. Her husband came home after drinking one night and saw her eating fried chicken. He asked, "Where the fuck is my fried chicken?" To which she replied with a drumstick to the face. He called the cops and my mom had to go pick her up from jail and kept joking that she was charged with assault with a deadly chicken.
So I had a case a couple years ago, and the defense attorney just could not stop laughing. Okay, and legit, this is what happened, and it's why it's just a tragedy for situations where there's actually family violence. This woman got charged for assaulting her spouse, and in the TUIT, which is the charging document, it wasn't super clear on what had happened, other than that she had thrown an object at him.
Okay,
and that is an assault because he didn't give her permission to touch him. Unwanted touching.
Okay. Yeah. And unwanted contact.
And they live together, which makes it a domestic.
Yeah.
So they were kind enough to offer a plea to this woman so that she was pleading guilty to being a disorderly person instead of to domestic violence based off the situation. And I still am clueless because I have not heard the fact pattern.
Okay.
It is very typical when a domestic violence case is pled down to a disorderly that I might still treat it as a family violence case and want it set for a pre-sentence investigation and for sentencing where you could get probation, some jail time, maybe held in abeyance, and I make you do some services. Mm-hmm. After I heard the fact pattern, however, I felt it appropriate to simply slap her with a fine, no probation, no jail, and send her on her way. As what was explained to me was the following. Husband came home drunk.
Okay.
She's sitting at the kitchen table.
Okay.
Clearly not happy that he has come home intoxicated.
Fair.
He begins to be a jerk.
Oh.
Very similarly to this, upon opening the refrigerator and says, "Where's my fucking dinner?"
Oh, no.
She walks over to the fridge as he walks to sit down to the table.
To be served.
Grabs a cheese stick and throws it at him and whips him upside the head with a mozzarella cheese stick. And I am sitting there
flyby cheese
taking
sticking.
this plea going, are you kidding me right now?
A cheese stick.
Yep. And I said,
was it pepper jack or Colby?
I think it was a mozzarella, just white
regular
cheese,
mozzarella.
string cheese.
Oh, God.
Assault by string cheese.
String cheese.
She
assaulting.
was fined $425 and told to have a nice day.
You could buy a lot of string cheese with $425.
This is my job. Many, many days, Charnell. This is my job. I just want you to know.
That breaks my heart because of the fact that there has been so much worse to happen to people in the world. And this guy called the cops on her for throwing a string cheese when he had the audacity to come home drunk and demand his dinner.
No. Like, listen, again, this could have gone very differently. And I won't even state publicly the things that may have happened were that statement to have been made to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't have been a string cheese, Charnell.
Sure wouldn't have. Me neither.
And I definitely wouldn't have wasted the chicken that the other lady did.
No, hell no. Because
I'm just going to sit there and eat my chicken in front of you.
Sure am. Yep. And tell you to get your own damn fried chicken.
Absolutely.
And now I'm hungry, actually.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Chicken sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for hanging in with us today. And we hope that you keep it curious.
And keep listening.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.